My name is Elena Voss. I am 34 years old. On Thanksgiving night, the long oak table in my parents' Virginia estate glowed under crystal chandeliers and candlelight. 22 people filled the room with laughter, clinking glasses, and the rich smell of rosemary roasted turkey. Every chair had a place card except one, the chair at the far end, closest to the swinging kitchen door. That seat was supposed to be mine. My mother had set the table with her finest Wedgwood china and monogrammed linens imported from Italy. My father stood at the head like a king, carving the turkey, with slow, theatrical slices. My older brother Marcus received the drumstick and the loudest toast to the son who actually carries the family name. My younger sister, Sophia, got the antique pearl necklace that once belonged to our grandmother. Even my brother-in-law received a limited edition bottle of 18-year bourbon with his initials engraved on a custom oak box. I stood in the doorway holding a $400 bottle of Napa Cabernet I had brought, watching them pass plates, and share stories while that empty chair sat there like a deliberate, silent insult. When I finally asked why my place wasn't set, my mother looked up with that perfectly polished, disappointed smile she reserved for people who didn't quite belong. "Oh, honey, we assumed you'd be working late again. You're always so busy with your little real estate deals." My father didn't even glance my way. He kept carving and said calmly, "Some people contribute to the family name. Others just contribute paperwork." The room laughed softly, the way people do when cruelty is dressed up as family banter. I smiled, the same calm, dignified smile I had practiced for years. I placed the wine on the sideboard, turned around, and walked out without another word. No scene, no tears, just the sound of my heels on the marble floor fading behind me. They had spent years treating me like the reliable but slightly embarrassing daughter, the one who handled the boring money stuff while Marcus and Sophia played the roles of golden heirs. I never joined the vineyard tours. I never posed for the lifestyle magazine features. I never married into old Virginia money. Instead, I built a career in commercial real estate acquisitions and distressed asset restructuring in D.C. and Richmond. They called it my cute little paperwork career. They had no idea how literal that was. 6 years earlier, Voss family vineyards had been drowning. 2 brutal harvests, my father's reckless expansion into luxury subdivision lots, and mounting debt from over-leveraged loans nearly wiped them out. The bank was circling. Vendors were threatening to cut off supply. My father told everyone he had pulled off a miracle turnaround. The truth was simpler. I had stepped in quietly. I used proceeds from a major Charlotte deal I closed, bought the core 240-acre property and production facility through my holding company, cleared the arrears, renegotiated every vendor contract, and personally guaranteed the seasonal operating lines that kept the vines watered and the tasting room open. I even let them stay at a laughably low month-to-month occupancy rate, because back then I still believed blood meant something. For 6 years they paid almost nothing, ignored every hint I dropped about formal structure, and continued treating me like the awkward extra at every holiday. I was seated late, cropped, out of the official family photos, spoken over at dinners, and corrected in public. Thanksgiving wasn't an isolated slight. It was the moment they stopped pretending. It was accidental. I didn't cry when I left that night. I drove back to my condo in Richmond, made tea, sat at my kitchen island, and wrote down everything I had carried for them. Property taxes, emergency irrigation repairs, 2 vendor settlements, the credit renewals I had signed when the bank was ready to foreclose, and the below market agreement I had foolishly allowed to drift. Then I printed the current deeds, the loan documents, the trademark filings for Voss family vineyards, which my grandfather had quietly transferred to me during the crisis because he never trusted my father not to sink. The name. By Monday morning, my attorney had the paperwork ready. Clean. Immediate. Effective. My personal guarantees on the January operating lines were withdrawn. The preferential occupancy of the flagship vineyard and tasting room would terminate in 30 days. Any continued use of the Voss family vineyards mark without written authorization would trigger injunctive action. All future communication would go through counsel. I asked her to deliver the documents in a simple white gift box, with a brass key to the main gate inside. She laughed once, then realized I was serious. 3 weeks later, on a cold, snowy Monday morning in December, the courier left the package at the vineyard office just before they opened for a private holiday tasting. My sister, Sophia, opened it first. She screamed loud enough that staff came running. My mother read the first page and had to sit down hard on a tasting bench. My father stormed out of his office, still holding a glass of reserve. Cabernet went pale when he saw my attorney's letterhead and started calling me repeatedly. By 10:17 a.m., he had called 19 times. My mother left a voicemail. That began with theatrical tears and ended in barely disguised threats. Marcus sent a single text, "What the fuck have you done?" They had spent years believing the vineyard was theirs by birthright. They never understood that I owned the dirt beneath their perfect weddings, their Instagram wine labels, and their carefully curated legacy story. Now the ground was shifting. The panic spread fast. Vendors started tightening terms once word of the ownership dispute leaked. A planned winter release event was quietly canceled. One local lifestyle magazine pulled their feature on Virginia's legacy wineries after receiving a polite but firm legal notice. My father tried the family intervention route. They showed up at my condo unannounced, all 4 of them, my mother with her rigid social smile, Sophia in designer boots and fury, Marcus looking somewhere between angry and terrified. My father started talking before I even let them inside, demanding. We resolved this like adults. I asked which adults he meant, the ones who left an empty chair at Thanksgiving, or the ones who had spent 6 years living off my silence and my guarantees. My mother tried tears. Sophia tried calling it a misunderstanding and accused me of being too literal, too sensitive. My father lowered his voice and said the property could never truly be mine because he had built the business with his own hands. I looked him in the eye and replied, "You're right. You built it, but you only kept it because I carried it." The meeting ended the way all their performances eventually did, with no answers, only panic. When the legal process moved forward, it was slow and merciless under fluorescent courtroom lights. Their attorney tried to argue family arrangements and informal understandings. The judge wanted numbers, actual rent paid, specific accounts. They had none. Metadata later proved some of the documents they submitted had been created after Thanksgiving on Sophia's laptop. The lie died publicly, quietly, and completely. The court confirmed title in my holding company. It upheld my right to terminate occupancy and issued an injunction on unauthorized use of the brand. 3 weeks after the order, I arrived at the vineyard with my attorney and a locksmith. The place wasn't destroyed in some dramatic fire. The damage was quieter and more expensive, missing inventory records, bent custom fixtures, scraped tasting tables, mislabeled boxes. On the central tasting bar where Sophia filmed her content, they had left a single white gift box. Inside was one of the blank Thanksgiving place cards. No name, just empty paper and a short note in my mother's handwriting. Some things never change. I slipped the card into my coat pocket. Some trophies come in stranger packaging. 4 months later, I sold the core property to a hospitality group from Atlanta for more than my father had once claimed the entire operation was worth. I retired the Voss family vineyards trademark, licensed a few archival designs tied to my grandfather's original plantings, and let the rest of the myth die. My father tried reopening in a smaller space outside Charlottesville under a new name. Without the prime location, the old credit lines, or the polished image, it never regained its pull. My mother's social invitations dried up. Sophia's influencer. Deals slowed when people realized the elegant world had been staged on borrowed ground. I built a sharper practice focused on family-held commercial disputes and distressed assets. On the wall of my new office hangs that blank Thanksgiving place card in a simple black frame. Clients sometimes ask what it is. I tell them it's a reminder. Never wait too long for people to acknowledge what they already know they owe you. Blood is not proof of love. Proximity is not proof of respect. And being tolerated is never the same as belonging. They spent years trying to convince me I wasn't on their level. In the end, they were right about only one thing. I was never meant to stay where they placed me.